for offering travel trainings, another important thing is allowing J-Sei participants to undertake meaningful activities and connections outside the home. We definitely would love for you to be involved with J-Sei events in person, but we also want you to have the opportunity and the ability to be able to travel to other places such as doctor's appointments, visiting friends, getting groceries, etc. And our goals for the series, so there's two main goals. The first part is to increase y'all's understanding of transportation programs and resources. And the second goal, which I think is the most important, is increasing your comfortability with accessing and using those resources. So it's one thing to know about AC Transit and the fact that it exists, but it's another to feel comfortable being able to use it every day or every week. Great. So a little bit about myself. I'm the transportation intern for this summer. I'm a second-year MSW student at UC Berkeley, and a lot of my work centers around working with Asian American and Pacific Islander older adults. So I'm really excited to be working with y'all for this summer. A lot of what my work is going to be doing for this summer is doing group trainings such as this, individual trainings if you want more of a one-on-one, or if there's a specific topic that you want me to focus on and work with you. Signing you up for programs and resources. I have senior Clipper card applications in the back if you're not familiar, if you don't currently have one. So that's something we'll be doing today. But in the future, there's also additional programs such as paratransit or subsidized transit programs like the taxi and Uber, which I'll be talking about in a little bit. And the last thing, which I think is super fun, is facilitating and leading outings to practice using public transit. So it's not a lot of me just going to be talking at you during these trainings. Also have the opportunity to go out throughout the Bay Area, explore different places like San Francisco, Jack London, Chinatown, and explore different areas while also getting to practice some of the skills that we're learning. So here is just an overview of the series. Here's the different trainings that I'll be doing. Feel free to attend all of them. Feel free to just attend a few of them. So these are just the group trainings that I'll be having. And again, there'll be individual ones as well. But we have AC Transit, BART, some of the subsidized programs, ferry and handy, trains, and the ferry transit programs. So jumping right now into the training, here's an overview of what I'll be talking about today. So we'll be talking about the transit and public transit options, some tips and tricks for having safe travel, apps, websites, and resources to help support your traveling. And then we're going to be doing a little tutorial on trip planning 101. So starting off with public transit. So the first one is AC Transit, which serves all East Bay residents in Alameda County and Contra Costa County. Can I get a raise of hands if anyone's used AC Transit before? Yeah? Don't feel comfortable? You never used it before? That's great.
Years ago.
Years ago? Okay. Cool. Well, hopefully we can increase your comfortability and we'll get you using it again. So just a quick overview of some of the trainings we'll be doing is figuring out bus routes. It can get kind of confusing sometimes, specifically in the summer when there's a lot of construction and sometimes the routes change. So we'll be going over figuring out the routes, figuring out transfers, and sometimes it involves one or two or even three sometimes buses. We'll also be checking on the status of the bus. Sometimes AC Transit is on time, other times it's a few minutes late. And I know when I'm waiting, I'm always like, where's the bus? So go over different ways for you to check that. And then lastly, I think it's really important, accommodations to support travel for older adults and people with disabilities. So I thought it was really interesting when I was researching it, AC Transit has a lot of accommodations that you don't necessarily think about. So our trainings will be going over the different accommodations that are available, getting you used to using them, and also practicing them. Next up is BART, or Bay Area Rapid Transit. Can I get a show of hands if you've used BART recently? Yeah. How about if you've used BART ever? Okay, cool, no worries. Well, BART has different routes all throughout the Bay Area. So a lot of our trainings is just familiarizing yourself with using BART and the different stations, including understanding the different platforms and train lines. So this map, I think when you first look at it, can be super confusing. There's all these different colors, and BART can be tricky in that it has all those colors, but it doesn't actually call them by that when you're at the BART station. They go based on the locations that are bolded. So getting used to the map and used to the stations. And another important thing that we'll be going over is getting used to using your Clipper cards. So I'll be talking about Clipper cards in a little bit, but I think BART is one of the main ones that uses Clipper cards the most common. So getting used to checking in at the terminal, checking your balance on your Clipper card, reloading it. The next step is paratransit programs. So through the ADA, it's required that all cities are required to offer some form of paratransit programs, which is specifically for folks who have disabilities. So if folks are unable to ride regular buses and trains, some or all of the time because of their disabilities. Yes.
I was told it costs $4 to ride them.
Yeah, so it's kind of confusing in that each city has a different paratransit program. East Bay Paratransit actually covers multiple cities. It does cost $4, but depending on what city you live on, there are subsidies where it'll be reduced. So some places, I think it costs $1. I think the most I've seen is $4. So there's different programs that are available, but it is a great option for folks who aren't able to take regular public transit, either because the disability has some issues with them using transit or results in them having challenges getting to and from transit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What city are you from?
Well, I live in Berkeley.
Berkeley. Okay, yeah. Berkeley has a program called Berkeley Rides for the Seniors and the Disabled, so they help you give subsidies for that. So it'll be, I want to say it's $2.50 or $2. So a little bit better.
Oh, but if you're going from Berkeley to like Richmond, then you have to change.
Yeah, I think when we have the paratransit program, we can map it out and figure out all the costs as well. So it's a case-by-case basis since folks live all throughout Alameda and Contra Costa. Yeah, question?
Is the bus just for the disability only, or other senior can use too?
It's just for disabilities. For some programs, there's certain age requirements. So I believe with East Bay, it might be 70 years and older.
Well, we passed that long time ago.
Yeah, so again, we'll have a specific training for this, and I think for paratransit specifically, we'll probably break it down into smaller groups based on where you live or your age. So yeah, for that training, we'll go over programs you're eligible for, how to apply, and then also scheduling your ride environment. So they vary again from city to city. So this is a fun one that I think a lot of people have been asking about, but the subsidized programs for transportation. So again, there's a lot of different options from city to city. I think one of the main ones we'll definitely talk about is GoGo Grandparent. Are folks familiar with what that is?
Go what?
GoGo Grandparent? This one right here.
Oh.
Okay, so it's actually a call center that's specifically for older adults to use. They partner with both Lyft and Uber, which is like a rideshare service. So in addition, with Lyft and Uber, you would have an app on your phone to schedule rides, but with GoGo Grandparents, they have a call center for you to be able to schedule their appointments. So you can talk to the concierge desk, tell them, I have an appointment, I want to make this scheduling. So they're a really useful service. So that's one that we'll be talking about for that training. And depending again what city you're from, there's also subsidies for you to have discounted costs for both the Lyft and the Ubers. Cool. And then something for this training as well is there's also Silver Rides, which is a taxi service. And depending if you have any mobility challenges and have a wheelchair, there's also the van services. So again, this one will be specific to where you are, but there's a lot of different options. And I think the Uber and Lyft is really great, especially when the bus lines and other public transportation might not be the most accessible where you're at. Any questions?
What's the number of Uber?
For Uber?
Yeah, for Uber, what is that?
Yeah, so Uber is an app on your phone. They're a rideshare service.
App?
Yeah.
I don't get apps.
Yeah, so if you don't have an app, that's why GoGo Grandparent is great. So they would, you wouldn't need to have an app in order to use it. They would be able to call you on your phone. They would let you know when your appointment is, do the scheduling for you, let you know when your ride is available. So GoGo Grandparent's the way to go if you don't have.
Will they hook you up with Uber or something?
Yeah. Yeah, so they'll schedule. You can get your pick of Uber or Lyft. They're pretty much essentially the same. Sometimes their costs will vary. So a lot of cities will have contracts with either Lyft or Uber, so you can get a discount with one or the other. So it just depends. Any other questions about the subsidized programs? And then another big outing that we're planning is San Francisco. So we'll probably combine these trains of using the San Francisco Bay Ferry and also Muni, which is like the ride that the buses that you would have in San Francisco. So we'll have one of these trains on this. Has anyone rode the ferry before? Yeah. I actually haven't rode the ferry yet, so I'm really excited to test this one out since there's a lot of different options that we can go to. I think like the baseball games, different options if folks are interested. Yeah, cool. So we have a San Francisco trip definitely planned in the future, just depending on where folks are interested on going. And then the last training in the series, so again, this will kind of just depend on folks' interests, but another form of public transit we'll talk about are trains. There's, I think, 3 main train services that go throughout kind of the Bay Area. So depending on where you're specifically traveling, we can talk about the specific train that you might use. So I have folks, I have family and friends down in Bakersfield, so I might take like the Amtrak to go down there. So if you have family kind of spread throughout California and you're interested in using the trains to visit them, another training we can do is help you figure out the trains. Great. Any questions before we move on to the next section? So just some quick tips and tricks to being safe while you're traveling. I think one of the most important things you can do is being prepared. So the first thing is familiarizing yourself with your route beforehand. We'll be doing trip planning one-on-one, so we can do notes and show you how to become familiar and what are things that you want to specifically look at and remember as you're traveling. And another important note is bringing notes on your trip and attaching it to something you won't lose. So I see some folks have lanyards, some folks have bags, so putting it somewhere that it's easy to find. I have copies of trip plan notes in the back too that we'll use in a little bit, but those are examples of notes that you can bring on your ride. And then the last thing that I think a lot of folks don't necessarily use a lot is the driver as a resource. So when you're using buses, I think buses most specifically, it's really good to ask them beforehand to verify your destination or the right. So if you have any question, is this the right bus? Maybe, for example, your stop has a lot of different buses and you're not quite sure. And a lot of times the buses will stop if they see you there. You want to make sure you're on the right bus so you're going on the right destination. Please talk to your bus driver because they're there to help.
I noticed that when it comes to handicap, that varies from person to person, you know, and that, I don't know, it doesn't feel right, you know, when it comes to public transportation. And I always sit in one place because I can see where I'm going. You know, I'm not a driver, but and even though I've been on that bus the same route day after day, I still do the same thing. But I noticed that when it comes to disability, it's lowered a little bit, unless if you're on wheelchair sometimes. But I don't know how to bring it up anywhere to anyone.
That's something that I can definitely look into more about exploring. I know for AC Transit specifically, a resource that I found is they have new rider cards. So if you're not super comfortable telling them about accommodations you need, you can show them a card. So if you flash pink, it'll be like, oh, please wait until I'm sitting down before you start the bus. There's other ones where if you're asking them to kneel the bus, which lowers it to the ground, so it's easier to get on, I think that color's like green. So that's something that I'll also be providing during the upcoming AC Transit training. But I'll, again, definitely look into resources to make you feel comfortable. Great. And then being safe while you travel. So a big thing is orienting yourself where you are. So like you mentioned, kind of watching where you're going, looking for street signs. For me, I like using physical landmarks. So sometimes it's kind of hard to like read the signs when you're driving by really fast. So I'm like, okay, that McDonald's, I know I'm going on the right route. Something that I also do sometimes as well, counting stops, especially if it's a kind of quick route. If I'm like, okay, I'm 4 stops away, I'll just make sure each time. And another thing that you can do is listening or looking at the intercoms. So they'll have signs on the tops to be able to show you what the next stop is. So just kind of keeping that in mind as you're traveling so you can be safe and you know where you are. Another thing is keeping a close eye on your belongings. So again, it varies from public transit, but just having them either on your lap or directly underneath your legs, just so you have an idea of where they are at all times. So I know with BART, you're required to have your Clipper card getting out. So it'd be really unfortunate if you were to lose your Clipper card and not be able to exit. So just having an idea of where it is at all times. And then the last thing is just washing your hands often. When you're using a lot of public transit, it is required to touch things that a lot of other people are touching, whether that be the handrails or the stops in the buses. So something that I do is I travel with like hand sanitizer, just so after I click the buttons, I can wash my hands, because there's still COVID, there's flu going around. We definitely want to make sure that you're safe and not getting sick while you're using public transit.
The hand wash in the bus?
Oh no, I'll bring my own.
Oh.
But sometimes I do see in the front of buses, not all of them, they'll have hand sanitizer and then also a box of masks. I don't necessarily trust the box of masks at the front, since some people can like sneeze on it, things can happen throughout the day. But the hand sanitizer should be fine to use at the front. So next is apps, websites, and resources. So the most important one that, again, I've been talking about a lot is Clipper cards. Can I get a raise of hand? Does anyone have a Clipper card? You all have Clipper cards?
Right there.
Yeah. Do you have the regular Clipper card or the senior Clipper card?
No, it's a regular
Regular?
one. And this one, they raised the price on like $2-3.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So the blue one is the regular one, and then the white one is the senior one. So the senior Clipper cards are for folks who are 65 years and older, and they're really good because you can get reduced fares or access to discount passes. So for instance, AC Transit is, I believe, around $250 for regular rides, but it's discounted 65% for seniors. So if you don't currently have a senior Clipper card, we do have applications in the back, and we can help you get access to those. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how to get rid of that part.
The bottom one just says interested in applying. Yeah, so that's something that we can help you figure out. So again, you just have to be 65 years and older, and then submit documentation proving so. So your ID that just says your birthday. So that's really helpful, because with Clipper cards, all of the public transit options that we're going to be talking about and doing outings for use Clipper cards. You can bring cash for some of them, but they might not let you, or it might be a little difficult in that situation. The next is Google Maps. So I think first off, can we get a hand raise? Who has a smartphone? Smartphones?
Yeah.
Okay.
One more?
It's okay. It's a good. We're a half mix. Yeah. So the different options I'll be going over are available on your laptop as well as on your phone. So if you don't have a smartphone, we can talk about the laptop options. Cool. So here are ones. So we'll be going more in depth on these two in another training, but we'll talk about Google Maps after this. So the first one is Transit. So I think this is a relatively new app, but it combines all of the different public transit options. So it's similar to Google Maps, but I think it's just a different way of like presenting the information. So if you're comfortable with using Google Maps, you might want to stick with that, but it can also help you explore transit as well. And that's specifically for your phone. And then AZ Transit is a separate app, kind of confusing. It's the one that's on the bottom right there. It's both an app and a website, like this one up here, and it's specifically for the buses. So Transit covers all of the transportation options. AZ Transit's just for the buses. Any questions? Okay, so we'll move on to our
I have a Clipper card that I just got recently, and but I don't know what's on the card. How can I find out?
Yeah. So there is, I I think if you just search up Clipper card online, you can be able to see the balance. So for instance, search it.
You have to go home and look online.
Yeah.
You can't do it right there. And I mean, I don't know if some people like a little anxious, it's like 10 o'clock in the morning, you wanna know how much you have. You need to get on the next, train, and you're looking at the time, but, to see how much the balance is not on you can't do it right then and there
Yeah.
at the bus, or at where you get the thing.
Yeah, so there's a few different options. You can go online. You can, if you have a smartphone, they do have the Clipper Card app, which is a way that you can transfer it specifically to your phone. So if you've been on like a bus or BART, or I think buses specifically, you'll see people like kind of tap their phone to the portal. It's because they have their Clipper Card on their phone, so you'd be able to see your balance. If you are specifically at a BART station, you can just use one of the terminals to check how much money you have. But I think a good rule of thumb is checking beforehand. So if you're at home, using it online, and you can just search it and add it up from here. I'm not sure if you can call in. That's something that I
Yes, you can use the number in the back to call, and it can tell you how much money you have left in the car.
Okay,
You have to write it down,
that's good to know. Okay.
They didn't go for senior though.
Good,
No.
customer service, 877-878-8883.
Okay. So I guess calling in is another option that we can do. I think for going over Clipper Card specifically, I was going to talk about it more at the BART training, but we can do in depth and like practice and like have someone call in and check their balance. Yeah, so a lot of different options for Clipper Cards. Any other questions? Oh, great. So next is trip planning 101. So I'll be using Google Maps specifically, since that's the one that I think a lot of folks are familiar with and have used. So we'll be going over how to search, read, and choose trip plans. And I think for this training specifically, we'll focus more on taking buses. So for trip planning, there's a lot of different things that we want to include. I think we can pass out the comments.
I can do that.
Okay, great. So I made trip planning notes. So it's a way for you to take notes of all of the different things you would want for the trip. Google Maps specifically, if there is a way for you to be able to print out all of the instructions, but I like having a nice overview of the different steps. So in terms of the main logistics you would want to know is the starting locations, the directions from the starting location to transit. So a lot of times there might be a bus outside of the main locations, but if you're traveling from home, you might have to walk a few blocks to get from your house to the bus stop for the main line. Another thing that you'll need is transit information, so which company. For the most part, it is Easy Transit, but I think there are some folks who are from Walnut Creek, and I believe it uses Country Connection instead, which is another bus line. Concord, yeah. So I think folks are from a lot of different places, but there's I think Country Connection and Easy Transit tend to be the larger bus agencies. You'll also want to know the number of the bus, the direction, and the route. So it's important to note that bus lines will run parallel to each other. So for instance, I think I might include a picture outside, but my bus stop is right outside on 66. So I have to cross the street for it to go north, but the one that's on the side of the street goes south. So I made that mistake, I think my first time is I was standing in front of the wrong bus stop and it took me the opposite direction I wanted to go. So it's really important to figure out which direction it's going. You also want to know where and when to get on transit, so what the bus stop is and what time. And it's important to note, give the bus some leeway. So it's usually good to get there at least 5 minutes earlier because sometimes the routes will be a little quicker and they might get there beforehand. And also to kind of factor in a little bit afterwards. So I think my bus stop is usually about 5 minutes late every day because it hits that intersection line. So just be mindful of having buffer time for your bus stop once you get there.
How come they've been late these days? How come? I mean, like 35 minutes late?
There's a lot of different reasons. If it's 35 minutes late, it's probably this larger thing. I know for me specifically, I live in Berkeley, and there's a lot of construction around like the UC Berkeley campus. So when they close lanes, like all the cars kind of get in the way, so then it slows down the buses. What also happens too is they'll change the bus route. So it's either summertime they'll change it, or just in general as they're switching it. So they're still trying to pick up and figure out what time and what the best route is. But 35 minutes is kind of a lot. So hopefully we can find you a better solution for that.
Well, yeah, well, I took the bus, same bus around, but I noticed that the delay, and I've heard for other people mention the same thing, but I don't know, and I've seen the, what do you call, the schedule, they have it, in lighting, inside the, what do you call, the seating, and there's this sign that says, 72, 3 minutes, 72 in, 14 minutes, and R in 30 minutes. And then 5 minutes later, the R is due. I mean, the schedule's kind of different. And I noticed that I'm taking number 18 bus going down Solano, and the sign up there, lighted, it says San Rafael something, and we didn't even touch San Rafael. I know that street, it says Solano, and so I noticed that they keep changing the signs, and it's not even there. The bus route, it says when coming, and here comes the number R. Less than 2 minutes. So I haven't seen that until recently, but they don't have schedules for number 18 bus anymore. And that was because there was a COVID thing, and some bus drivers had to stay home. And and then new buses drivers come in about a year later, and they keep like back and back. So anyways,
Well, if the buses get a little tricky, maybe those subsidized taxi programs might be a little bit better if you're in a rush. Yeah, that's unfortunate. I'm so sorry. Okay. And then I think just lastly, in terms of main logistics, is figuring out transfers and also directions once you get off the bus to getting your end destination. So for searching trip routes, so I just have Google Maps pull up. So we're just going to walk step by step for what you would do in order to search the route. So pulling up Google Maps. Next, you would type in the address of the destination. So I went ahead and put it in already. So right now we're searching getting from J-Sei to Jeff Williams Square. Next, you would click directions. So it's always going to be that button on the far left. Hopefully y'all can see it. So once you click directions, a new screen is going to pop up. Okay, it's a little cut off, but it's this bottom screen right down there. And then you would put in your starting location, so that box right there. And then once you put that in, it'll show the different options. If you can see in this top bar right up here, there's all the different ways for you to get there. You can fly, it could be a very short flight. You can bike. Oh no.
Oops.
And call.
Sorry.
What happened?
That was me. I'm just trying to get rid of that box on the bottom. I just don't know how to do that.
But for this option, we'll want to take the bus since we're looking at public transit options. So it's that blue symbol in the middle, and then I'll highlight it right there. So this is just the steps to searching out the trip routes. And then from there, something that you can do is accounting our departure time or arrival time. So for instance, if I'm at work right now, I get up at 3:30, I want to figure out maybe how to get there by 4 o'clock. What I would do is first select leave now. So it's this bottom button up the top. So if you remember from the last slide, that top portion, just the one that we were looking at. And then from leave now, a drop down menu will pop up. So from there, I can change depart at time. And then from there, this screen will pop up, and then we would just adjust the depart time. So for instance, I think I put this one at 3:30, which is when I get off. So then we can see all of the different options once I am able to head out. And you can also do the same thing for arrival time. So again, you would just click the leave now. The drop-down menu will appear. Switch it to arrive by. And then this is all the options. So for instance, if I want to go to Jack London tomorrow night at 5 p.m. and that's when I want to arrive, this will be all of the options that are available for tomorrow. Any questions?
Oh, can you tell them how to read the option, like the first one? Go back one.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, we'll be talking about that now.
Okay. Okay.
Any questions about how to search up a travel route? No? Okay, well now we're gonna practice it. So I'll use this screen up here. And can I have someone volunteer their favorite restaurant? Where's y'all's favorite place to eat?
Kerala.
Kerala? Okay.
I don't know. That's a good one, right?
That in Berkeley?
Oh, yeah.
Is it like an alley where close to Vine Street?
No,
It's-
it's
near
close to
Berkeley
the Berkeley Bowl.
Yeah, Ward Street.
Wood Street.
Oh,
Great. So we put in the address, we put in the destination, we have the bus icon up top, and then I'm gonna click it. Great. And now we can adjust the leave now time. So these are all the options if we were to leave like in the next 10 minutes. But we don't want to go right now, we want to go in a little bit. So let's change it to arrive by. Click the drop down menu. Can folks see okay? I know it's kind of tiny.
So we want to arrive by 5.
So let's switch it to 5. We're going out to dinner tonight.
Yeah.
These are our options.
If you go early, then you can get a seat and not wait so long. Yeah. So you go when they open.
So there's 3 different options here in the next stage of the tutorial. I'll explain how to read through the different options. Great. Any questions about that process? No? Let's try one more.
I have the starting point and where I want to go to, and it can give the time, but I want 2 hours from now here.
Yeah, it's only could be a little different so I think these 3 buttons there.
Oh, okay.
So a good rule of thumb is whenever you're using online or just want to look at the menu for different options, it's always going to be either 3 dots or 3 lines. So if you see up here, there's 3 lines in the top corner. So I'll click it right here, and then you see the action menu. So for her question specifically being on her phone, if she wants to change the leave now time, I believe it's 3 dots on the app.
Mm.
And then if anyone wants to try afterwards, we can have sessions specifically on the phone to show you how to do it. Can I get one more restaurant?
What is that? The waterfront, that one was there. Scott.
Oh, Scott's.
Scott.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So I have Google Maps open, I'm gonna look at Scott's seafood.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Cool. So we'll click the address. And then we'll click directions. And then starting point would be J-Sei. We have the bus option up top. And then leave now. So for this one, let's do depart by. So say we don't get off till 6 o'clock tonight. So we'll look at all of the options by 6 o'clock. day. And then these are all the different buses and BART routes you can take. And what's helpful about Google Maps too is it'll show all of the different routes on the map as well. So for me, I'm a very visual learner, so I like looking at all of the different options. So you can see this is one of the other routes. So this is involved taking BART to MacArthur and then doing a transfer to the bus. And then there's also another option where we go more through like West Oakland. Great, y'all are getting it. So next we'll practice reading trip plans. So when we were in Google Maps, so that here, if you click the first route and you double click to get into it, it'll show an overview of the trip plan. So scrolling down, you can see all of this information. So going into this slide specifically, this is an example of going to, I believe, Jack London from J-Sei. So reading through it really quickly, looking at how long the trip will be. I think that's one of the most important things I try to look at is how much time it's going to take. So if it's going to take me a whole hour on a bus ride, I might just spend a little extra money to take like an Uber or a taxi. So first off, it's always going to be on the top line at the very top. So it'll show the time it'll take, so the starting time, ending time, and then also the total time. So that'll always be that very top line at there. And then the other really important thing I like to look at is how much walking is going to be involved in the trip. So I'm trying to see, is it worth it for me to take public transit? If you're going to be walking for 30 minutes out of that full 35, it's not quite worth the time. So that's always going to be on this like bottom left corner right here. So it'll show all the important information on the very top. So for this one, it's 10 minutes out of the 35. So that's pretty doable. I think for this, it's kind of that walking, getting to the bus stop and then getting off the bus stop.
So what bus is on San Pablo, and you get off to come here from us, El Cerrito?
72.
The 72, not M?
I'm not sure what an M is.
No.
You could take R. R is rapid and less stops.
Because one time, in the beginning when I started coming here, I was trying to take public transportation, and I don't know how long it takes me to, when I get off the bus and then walk here. You know.
Yeah, I know a lot of the 72 and the 72M overlap. We can spend time afterwards to maybe look at the bus routes, so that way you have an idea of how to get here. But we'll also go over it pretty in depth in the AC transit training. Yeah, just so you're not like having your address on the recording for this training. Okay, great. Sorry, screen's a little frozen. Great. So for next, in terms of reading the trip plan, getting information on the bus is also really important. So to start off, the time to leave from your start location. So that'll always be on the top right over here. So it's really helpful to kind of read that left-hand bit since it'll show like an overview. So if it's in color, it's always going to be public transit, and if it's those blue dots, it'll always be walking. So you can see the times as well in between. So for here, we'll have to leave by 1:16, and then the intersection to find the bus will be on this side. So we'll be going to San Pablo and 67, so just a few blocks down. Next is the time and bus, when the bus should arrive. So that'll be 1:23. And then it's kind of hard to see it on the screen, but most of the text is black. For here, the 1:23 is green, which means it's on time. If the bus is ever running late, it'll be red. So it's really helpful. I think the problem that she was mentioning of her bus running late, if it shows up as red, you'll know that it's a little bit later. So for me, at least when I'm walking to the bus, if I see red, I'll probably leave here a little bit later, just so I'm not standing outside for too long. And then lastly, the bus and direction. So we'll be taking the 72M and it'll be going to Jack London Square. Any questions? Oh. Great. And then lastly, in terms of reading the trip plan, it's really important to figure out which bus stop you'll get off at. So if you're just reading down the line, it'll say the starting time and the ending time. So for instance, the purple, you'll see the starting location, and then at the very end, it'll be where you'll be getting off. So for us, it'll be 2nd Street and Washington Street. And then lastly, the directions to complete the trip. So from this screenshot, you can't see it. So it just says walk about 0.3 or 0.2 miles. But for instance, if we go into Google Maps right now, if you just click that arrow, it'll expand the directions. So for this one, it says head southwest on Broadway, turn left at Water Street, and then turn right to get to Scott's Seafood. So that's a lot of information to kind of keep in your brain of just being like, okay, this is the stop I'm getting on, this is the stop I'm getting off. So I also printed out trip plan notes for you to take copies of at home. Now I can also send them as well if you want additional ones, but we can practice using trip plan notes based on one of the trips. So I'm gonna pull up the trip plan notes and let's go ahead and use Scott's Seafood from here. Okay, so we're going to use this first route up here. So we can type in the starting location is going to be J-Sei. We're going to go get some tasty seafood at Scott's. Some crab sounds good right now. And then I have them in blue up top. This is just a different way for you to use it, but I like to see the total trip duration. So we remember where to find how long it takes for someone to travel the route. If you can see it on the screen, can you let me know what number it is?
34 minutes, the total time?
Yeah, 34 minutes. And I'm just realizing we can't see the second screen. It only lets me share one screen at a time. Okay, we'll use this and then I'll just show you after this. And then next, the arrival time. What time are we going to be arriving? 6:39. Yes. And then what stop will we be taking? Where's our bus stop at? Approaching a railroad crossing.
She's taking the train.
So we're going to be looking for the colors in the map. So again, the blue dots are going to be walking, and then the colored line is going to be the bus stop. So what's the name of the bus stop we're going to be taking? Yep, it's San Pablo and Ashby. And it's kind of hard to read. Okay. And then what time are we going to be getting to that bus stop?
21 minutes? No,
What time?
21.
14. Yeah, 6:14. But it will take us 20 minutes on the bus, so that's also something helpful to look at.
Mm.
And then from there, what bus are we taking?
$72 or
The 72.
Where are we going?
We're gonna Sam Seafood
Oh,
Scott's.
or Scott's.
oh.
Too many S's. And then for the directions to the bus stop, so I'll click into here. What are the directions?
And east on 66th Street.
we're heading towards Liquid Sugar Drive. And then we're gonna turn a left on Emeryville. We're gonna make a right and then another left. And then that's how we'll get to San Pablo and Ashtabula.
Oh.
And then we're gonna click into this menu. First off, what exit are we taking? So if we're looking at the bottom of the line with the train or the bus.
Uh-huh.
So it's Broadway and 3rd. And then
That in Berkeley?
this
No,
is-
Jack
Oh, San
London.
Francisco.
Jack London Square,
Oh,
Oakland.
And then right at the very bottom, we'll see the directions how to get there after we exit. So it's about a 4-minute walk or 0.2 miles. So it's a little walking. We're just heading southwest on Broadway and then turning left. But that's all the stuff we would need to know. And I didn't finish copying over, but transferring it over to the trip notes, you'll be able to carry it with you on the bus. You can put it in with your lanyards or in your backpack, and then that way you can reference it if you don't have like a smartphone or another way to look at it. Great.
Mhm.
Any questions? We're almost done. And then the last thing I wanted to cover today was choosing your trip plan. So we looked into a lot of different options. I think I talked about some of the things that I looked at, but I wanted to also talk about some of the most important things to consider. So there's one way, if you just look at like the trip plan options, you can just select the first one and that will work for you. But for me, at least kind of traveling, there's a lot of different things you want to kind of keep in mind. So the most important one for me is travel time. Okay, is it going to take me a full hour? Is it going to take half an hour? You want to compare the different travel time options. The second most important thing is the walking distances and time. One of the things that I think is a little frustrating is having to walk really far to get to my bus stop or having to walk really far from the like final stop. So including overall walking distance, getting there, and again, from the final stop to the final destination. So you want to find the option that's the most convenient for you, and sometimes it might involve taking a bus that takes longer but gets you closer, so it's more convenient and you just have to sit there.
Mhm.
And then the last thing is if there's any transfers. So there's a lot of different things to keep in mind with transfers. I think the most important one for y'all is the cost. Every time you transfer, it's going to be another $1.50. So it starts to get more expensive if you have to do a lot of transfers. Specifically, again, if you have to transfer from AC Transit to BART, since BART's a lot more money. There's also wait times for transfers. So you mentioned the 30 minutes. I think for me, when I'm heading back to UC Berkeley, there's my transfer time is like 20 minutes. So I'm just sitting on a bench for like 20 minutes. Luckily, it's next to Acme Bread, so there's a cute little bakery that I can chill at while I'm waiting. But not all transfer locations are the best. And then the last thing is the distance between the transfer. So we'll be looking at that in some of the maps. For the most part, a lot of transfers tend to be around the same block, so you just kind of have to go one block over. But if it's a transfer where you're walking multiple blocks, that might kind of get into your time, and you might run into some issues, whether that be the distance or the time it takes for you to walk there and you miss the bus, or other things that might happen when it's far away. So these are 3 different options. So we're heading to UC Berkeley from J-Sei. So these are 3 very different options. And again, looking at travel time, it's always going to be on the very top. So zooming in really quick. Sorry if it's kind of blurry, but you can see the different overall time options. So these ones, there's a 30-minute one, there's a 45-minute one, or there's a 36-minute one. So if you're in a rush, you might want to take the 30-minute one, but it will, as you'll see, we'll go into the different options and see why it takes so long. It might be actually better for you to take the 45-minute one. Next is the walking distance time. So again, at the top, it'll always have an overview of the total walking distance. So for option number 1, so tiny, I'm sorry, it's 13 minutes. For the second option, it's 21 minutes. And for the third option, it's 18 So they're relatively close in times, but once we look at the breakdown, you'll see there's a big difference. So the first thing is the distance to get from the your starting location to the public transit station. So for this first one, it's about 3 minutes, 0.2 miles. For the second one, it's 8 minutes or 0.4 miles, so twice the amount of time. And then for this third option, it's 4 minutes or 0.2 miles. And something to note too is when they do the times and the distances, they're basing it on a 20-minute average walking pace. So if you know you walk a little bit slower, it might be helpful for you to consider the miles instead of the minutes. For me, I know I walk a little bit faster than this pace, so I usually go to sleep a little bit later. But that's just something that you can figure out about how fast that you walk. Next, we'll look at the distance between the transfers. So again, we're looking at all of the blue dots between. So for this first option, there isn't any blue dots between that first bus. So there isn't anything there. For the second option, it's 1 minute, so it's probably one where you just go around the block. So one corner to the other corner. And then for that last option, it's the same thing, just 1 minute walk. But for this one specifically, you'll see that this one is a bus to a bus, but this one's bus to BART. So you're going into a BART station, so even though it says you're only walking 1 minute, the time it takes to go down the BART station, this one's MacArthur, so it's a lot of stairs. You're going up the stairs, down the stairs, trying to get to the station. It's gonna take you a little more than just 1 minute. And then the last thing, again, is the distance between the final stop to the final destination. So for this last option, it's 10 minutes. So it's a pretty far walk, about half a mile. So you're not super close to this. For the second option, it's 12 minutes, so even longer. And then this last option is 13 minutes. So it's kind of just the pros and cons. So for this third option, it costs a little bit more money. For the second option, it takes longer than all of the other ones, and you have to transfertize. And for the first one, it's just at one bus, but it is a little bit of a walk. And then again, maybe talk about the transfers. So this one, this one is a bus to a BART, and okay, yeah. So the second option is a bus to a bus, and the third option is bus to BART. So again, that one will probably cost a lot more, but it is a little bit faster. So now we'll practice. We have Oakland Kaiser as an option. Do folks go to Kaiser? Yes, question?
Can you practice one more time with the, I can do it just point A to point B when you add stops. I don't get the summary when you have from here to here to here, and I cannot see.
Oh, do you want to move up?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
But I mean, I can do from point A to point, from here to Kirara, I can do it. But I want to add stops.
Okay.
So I add stop to Yoshi. And after that, you have the summary of where to, 1, 2, 3 there, I cannot get it. So I went to 3 dots, and I just go to edit stops. And then what else after that? I go to 3 dots and say options, add stop, refresh. So I went to add stop, right? And then I say, let's say, Alameda ferry. Okay, let's say this one, ferry point Alameda. So how do I go after that? I finish the add stops. How do I get the summary that you have, in the line?
I think your app will look a little bit different.
So you click on which route you want to take.
I finished now.
Done.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And to do step-by-step directions, you can put a summary.
Yeah, that's one.
Yeah, your app looks a little bit different than that. Maybe we can go over it.
Okay, we can do that.
Yeah, I'm also look up the,
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, we can do a one-on-one if that's something that you want to spend a little more time figuring out.
Thank you so much.
So let's type in Open Kaiser, and then I also want to do a time check too. We didn't specifically say a time that it was ending in case folks had questions, but it is 2:01 in case folks need to leave. But we'll just be going over the different options to get to Open Kaiser, and then afterwards, any other questions you all have. Great. Okay, so these are the different routes to Open Kaiser. I think there's just these two options. So for this first one, we double click in to see this overview that we have. So for this one, it is about a 4-minute walk going from J-Sei to Hall Street and 65th. We're riding the bus for about 8 minutes and then dropping off at MacArthur bus station, Park Station. And then from there, it's saying we're going to walk 15 minutes to get to the Kaiser, Open Kaiser from there. So that's one option. It is taking a bus, but you are walking a decent amount while we're getting off the bus.
I thought Kaiser has a shuttle.
Yes, Kaiser also has a shuttle, which we'll talk about in some of the trains. Yeah.
Okay.
And then that red bus, is that the Emeryville route? There's a loop around Emeryville?
Yes, so that's the Emeryville round.
Hmm.
Which I believe that's free.
Free.
Yeah. So it is an option if you're okay with walking a little bit, it is free. The other option is to take the 57. So we'll click into here. So the first option was about 27 minutes. This is about 29 minutes. So they're about the same time. So it's just figuring out the cost and the distance. So here you can see we'll be walking about 10 minutes or about half a mile going to Christie Ave and then 65th. So this one is 57. Let me just open it down here. This shows all the stops. So this is BC Transit, and then we're getting off at MacArthur Boulevard and Piedmont, and then it's just right around the corner. So for this one, it might be a better option because you're only a block away. So it gets you really close to the Open Kaiser, but it is a little bit of walking beforehand. So between the two options, what are y'all's thoughts? Would you want to take the Emeryville round? It is free, but you do have to walk. I want to say, let's go back to there. You're walking a bit more. You're walking 19 minutes, or you can take the 57. It is walking in the beginning, but it's only for 10 minutes, but you do get closer to the station.
I would ask Tara for a ride to the bus stop and then I would take the bus.
Yeah. I would probably take Emeryville around to MacArthur Park and then a shuttle to Kaiser.
That's also a good option. Yeah. So something we'll talk about in the trainings too. So for this one specifically, we're just looking at taking the buses, but you can also combine the different public transit options to make it more convenient. So if we're going to Jack London, we can take the Emeryville round to the BART station, to the BART station, to the ferry station, and then cross over. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, that's it in terms of my content for today. Thank you all for being super interactive. Do you have any other questions before we close out?
How can they sign up for the additional training for this session?
So first off, I emailed everyone who had signed up a Google form. So if you could please fill out that Google form, it'll ask you what city you're in, what trainings you're interested in learning more about, if you have a smartphone, if you have a laptop. So from there, we'll pair folks based on their location, since a lot of the trainings will be more specific, and if you're only interested in doing certain trainings, we'll have an idea. So please fill out that Google form, and then I'll be contacting you, either me or Joe, and we'll be figuring out the next trainings. It also asks for what days you're interested in having trainings as well. Since again, we'll have a in-person class training where we'll go over the content and some tips and tricks. And then for the second part, we'll be going on outings, so traveling around. So it just kind of depends on everyone's schedule and what they're interested in. Any other questions? No? Okay, great. Thanks for coming.
How about online? Are there any questions? Gail or Suzanne, I think is still online.
Well, I was wondering if there was a direct way to get from Concord Walnut Creek area to J-Sei without having to transfer things.
Yes, that's something that we can talk about. I'm gonna take this. I will reach out to you and we can figure out that travel plan.
Yeah. Are you close to BART? Gail, do you know how to get to BART?
Yeah, I still have to get the bus though to BART.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, I don't want to, transfer twice. I think I would have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay.
I was hoping there was a bus that takes you from Concord Walnut Creek directly to Emeryville or somewhere near there.
Okay. So Cyan will follow up with you. She can research some options and then she can call you or do a Zoom with you. Gail knows how to do Zoom and kind of walk you through.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
You don't
That's
have a
great.
hard copy instead of online, do you? For us to fill out?
For which one?
You were just saying,
Google form?
yeah. Sometimes if you have a hard copy, I can just bring it here.
Yeah, we can print them out right now if that's helpful.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Any trainings you're specifically interested in?
Anne's
A box for
interested
you?
in Go-Go Grandparents. I think she's interested in that. And then if you're interested in trying others, your grandson or someone could drop you off here and you could go on the excursion with us. So you wouldn't be alone, just to experience it, see what it's like. We're going to have little fun outings.
And then option 2 is I can meet you at where you live and we can take a public transit into J-Sei before the outings too. So if you're not comfortable taking it by yourself, that's something that I can also help with.
Yeah, you have to